My name is Sother Teague. I have a bar in the East Village of New York City called Amor y Amargo, which means love and bitters. I operate an all bitters program. We have about 250 tincture bitters, somewhere around 110 potable bitters. We don't use any sugar, we don't use any juice, and we don't shake any drinks here at Amor y Amargo. So it's all bitter all the time. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about how we perceive bitterness on the palate. And if I look a little awkward, it's because I'm in an empty room. It's weird to be doing this live. But please, at any point, send me questions so that we can get some better feedback and make me feel more comfortable. So bitter, how do we perceive bitter? We only taste 5 things on our palate: sweet, sour, salty, umami, which means savory, and then of course my favorite, which is bitter. And then of those 5, only one of them is a truly acquired taste. And again, that's my favorite. It's bitter. We're born with a sweet palate. We come out of the womb looking for sugar because it's calorically dense, and it's also probably not poisonous, so it's good for our growth and our survival as a species. Sour is something that delights us. We give little kids drops of lemon juice and sour, and they smile and they laugh and they like it. Salty, another thing that we need for survival, so we crave that as well. And then umami is savory. It's very comforting and warming. Bitter, however, is perceived by our brains as poison. So even if we put it in our mouth and our mouth says, I think I like this, within a nanosecond, the brain says, no, you don't. That's poison. Get away from it. So we have to acquire the taste for bitter as we go through life. Generally speaking, we're born with that really sweet palate. As we get older and older, we transfer over to a more bitter palate. And then there's a weird phenomenon at the end of life where men actually turn around and go back the other way and start going back towards sweet. But that's for another broadcast. Anyway, I want to thank Tales of the Cocktail and Ann Tennerman, and of course Candace down there in the office, who's been helping me set this thing up. It's a remote broadcast. They're all in New Orleans. I'm here in New York. And then we're gonna taste some bitters. I'm gonna start with an easy one. I think through the progression that we have here, the 6 that I said that we would do, I want to start lighter and move to heavier, because if we do the opposite, we blow out our palates. We don't perceive the flavors from the other ones. This is Amaro Montenegro. I'm gonna put it towards the camera. This one's been around since 1885. They make just this product, and they have been doing so every day since 1885. That's actually their slogan, every day since 1885. It's named after a queen, or princess rather, Princess Elena of Montenegro. It's not from Montenegro. It's named after her, though. There was a time when you made a product, you made something, you named your product after something that was very popular. So she was very popular at the time, so they named their Amaro Montenegro. This one's very tea-like in the glass, sort of golden. It's really smooth looking. It's got some, viscosity. It hangs onto the sides of the glass, so that means that there's a bit of sugar, and that's important to note as well. All Amaro have sweeteners. Tincture bitters are the opposite. They have no sweeteners. All Amari involve a sweetener, and it can be any sweetener they want to use. Sugar is obviously super common. Burnt sugar, caramel, beet molasses. Not sure what Amaro Montenegro uses, but it's got some legs. It's not ridiculously sticky sweet like some Amari, and the ones that we're going to taste will go down that road as well. So it's important to note that Amaro, though the word means bitter in Italian, Amaro, the category, means bittersweet liqueur. So bittersweet. It's always a component of sweetness in Amari. Amaro Montenegro has some lush tea-like aromas, pico, orange. It's got a nice orange blossom thing happening, very floral. It goes from orange blossom into bitter orange. It's bittered with gentian, which is a flower. It's a very common bittering agent. I think it's common because it's a flower. It's really easy to grow. It's very light to carry. It travels well, so it's an easily used one. And then it goes to that florality of gentian, and then the backside of Amaro Montenegro has a curiosity that it's very juicy and wet, like wet vegetables. So you get this sort of cucumber, celery action happening on the backside. It's important to note ABV on Amari. This guy clocks in at 23%, so it's only 46 proof, which means it's a great session Amaro. You can sit around and drink this, all afternoon in the sun, hanging out, having lunch. How we use this one here at Amor is this one is certainly one we reach for when we want a drink to be juicy and light. This is a great substitute for juice because we don't use any juice at the bar. So this one stirs into drinks really well. It makes them lighter and brighter. Still brings a nice bitterness, lingering finish, mouth coating without being sticky. You know, it doesn't make you smack your lips, but it makes you want to lick them. Anyway, it's one of my favorites. Anybody can jump in with questions anytime. I have to lean in to read it because I don't have my glasses. Porco present. Stefan Was, nice. Anyway, Amaro Montenegro. Every day since 1885. Moving down my list here, we're going to go to Vecchio del Capo. So this one's somewhat similar in flavor profile and layout to Amaro Montenegro. I think it's, I hope everybody's got a glass of water next to them. You can see this one's a bit more viscous out of the bottle. Right, pours a little slow. Same tea-like color. I'm colorblind. Color doesn't matter to me that much. Have a glass of water nearby for two reasons. One, of course, rinse your palate. Two, smell the water. It's neutral, so it sort of resets your olfactory sense to 0, so you can start again. And then we're going to approach this one. So viscosity looks very similar to Amaro Montenegro. In fact, I guess color does as well. I don't really think about those things too much. It's a little darker. Vecchio del Capo, it's 35%, so it's 70 proof. This is, you know, close to standard proof. So it's going to have a lot more heat on it. These guys have been around since 1915. And, you know, straight off the nose, you get a lot of orange peel, bitter orange peel. And maybe even some like notes of cola, because there is cola nut in this one, which is exactly what it sounds like. Cola nut is from, you know, where we derive cola flavors for Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, etc. All right, then we go to the taste. As mentioned, orange peel. It's got a sharp little quinine spike in there, so this is a quinine Amaro. Quinine's a flavor that you know, of course, from. Let's see, someone's asking me a question. Anything I find that clashes with, I assume you're talking about Amaro Montenegro. Oddly, no. In fact, even sort of one of their campaigns for a while was Make Mine a Monty, and they would say, you know, whatever it is you already drink, do a 50-50 split with Montenegro. So Make Mine a Monty was one of their campaigns for a bit. And I've tried it with every spirit that I have on the bar, which is pretty much one from every category. Again, I focus on Amari and vermouth, this guy, I do have one from every spirit category almost, so I've tried it with all of them. Are there any other similar products to Varnelli Amaro della Barista that are unfiltered and on that end of the bitter scale? I mean, here's the great and annoying thing. We're going to get to della Barista later in this tasting. No, there's no product that's like it. There's no product that's like any of these products. You know, as spirits professionals or spirits enthusiasts, you know, we often think about things like bourbon, and we say, well, bourbon is a great thing that you can compare and contrast one bourbon to the next because there are rules. 51% corn is the mash bill. Minimum 51% corn is the mash bill. You know, brand new charred American oak barrels made in the United States. There's definitely a set of rules that define what bourbon is. So then you can literally compare them one to another. Amaro, there are no rules. The entire definition of Amaro is bittersweet liqueur. So they can go in any direction that they want to go. We try and subcategorize them just because I think people inherently want to pigeonhole things. But no, I can think of a few other unfiltereds. I can't think of anything that has this kind of flavor profile. But we'll get back to Della Barista in a bit. I do want to mention, now that we've got some more viewers on board, at the end of this broadcast, which is going to be in about an hour, on the Tales of the Cocktail Facebook page, they're giving away a copy of Mark Bitterman's book, The Bitterman's Field Guide to Bitters and Amari, which is a great book. I have it at home. If I'd have known, I would have brought it so I could show it to you on camera. It's you know, soft-bound book that's it's true to its form. It's a field guide style book, so you can carry it around, write in it, kind of tear it up a little bit, and it's got hundreds and hundreds of tinctures mostly, and definitely a whole lot of Amari as well. So it's a great book to just have on hand behind your bar. It's got slick pages so you can get it wet. It doesn't matter. So we'll be giving away a copy of that book at the end of this, back over on the Tales of the Cocktail Facebook page. So jump over there when this is over. I'm not sure how they're doing it, but they wanted me to mention it, so there you go. All right, let's get back to Vecchio del Capo. So we talked about it's got orange oil for sure. It's got quinine, that's the bittering agent, which again is a common one that we know from tonic water. Then it backs up with a lot of like minerality, almost slate-like. You know, this is from down in the sort of the toe of the boot of Italy, so a lot of wines come from down there. The soil generates, you know, harsh growing environments for the grapes, so it does the same for all of the botanicals. You know, you see the pastoral scene here of the coast, so we're down by the water, so there's some salinity. So you definitely get a slatey, minerally note in here. And then the kind of final notes on the backside definitely include baking spices, which are super common in Amari. We've got lots of like allspice, maybe a little ginger. It's great Amaro. Versatile as well, similar to Amaro Montenegro, but hotter. So it's higher proof. So it's gonna you know, bring a little bit more backbone and structure to cocktails. Again, where Amaro Montenegro can slip in and be sort of juice-like, Vecchio del Capo can still have that sweet nature, that tea-like nature, but some tannins as well as higher proof. So it's gonna really give structure to cocktails. My water. Back to the water. Let's see. Next, we're going to go to Cynar. Everybody loves Cynar. Cynar, it's billed as artichoke liqueur. I often say to people, overwhelmingly tincture bitters and potable bitters, if they'll tell you anything about them, they don't taste like what they say they're going to taste like. They taste complex and rich, and they have those components in there, but I don't taste artichoke when I taste this by any means. But it is made with artichoke leaves. They claim that they have, I think, 16 herbs, spices, roots, etc. that they use. All these guys are super proud and excited to tell you how many things that they use in their bottle, and then not tell you what any of them are. They're super secretive. They have lots of paranoia about people going out and making their product, which I try and convince these guys that that's never going to happen. But they still won't let things out of the bag. So at least Cynar lets you know that there is artichoke in there. And that comes from Cynara, which is the Latin word for artichoke. And that's how we say Cynar, C-Y-N-A-R. Anyway, much darker. So this one's got, more likely than not, it's got burnt sugar as its sweetening agent. It's going to be a bit more viscous because of that. Burnt sugar is an amazing ingredient in Amari and anywhere, frankly, because it does a couple of things for you, especially in liquids. It adds sweetness because it is sugar. It also adds bitterness because they've burned it. And then it adds that viscosity, the mouthfeel, which is very super pleasing. So it's a lot richer in the glass. We swirl it around. These guys have been around since 1952. Cynar is a super session. It's 16.5%, so it's only 33 proof. And let's get a taste. So right up the nose, it's got, you know, what we refer to as thistle. Artichoke is a thistle, so are sunflowers, so are cardoons. It's a type of plant that has this certain ester that gives a very, I recognize it right away after a lot of practice, I assume, but it's got this very recognizable aroma, thistle. So right away I get thistle, then maybe a little bit of molasses, and that could just be because it's using burnt sugar. Maybe it is molasses, they won't tell us. And then let's go for a taste. Please talk about the difference between the regular Cynar and a 70, aside from the obvious. The obvious, of course, is that it's 70 proof rather than 33. I was lucky enough to be involved with tasting the 70 when they were testing it out. They also tested out a 100 proof. And their entire goal that they told me was they wanted to create a higher backbone, more solid structure for the product to stand forward in cocktails. You know, all of you and myself, we're the leading force in the cocktail sort of revolution that's still going on. And all these guys who have never really been concerned with or excited about cocktails are now becoming concerned and excited because it's a revenue stream for them, and a point of recognition. So they wanted to make something with a bigger backbone so it could stand up in cocktails. And their ultimate goal, and I do believe they achieved it, was that they wanted the flavor to remain the same. So with the exception of it being warmer in your chest and a little bit lighter on your palate because the evaporation rate is faster because the ABV is higher, it's pretty much the same. I think that was Stefan who asked that, so thanks from the Porco Lounge. Back to this. So when you taste it, definitely get that like burnt sugar, molassesy flavor, a little bit of licorice even. There's clove in here for sure. That's probably actually coming from the chinar, the artichoke aspect of it, because those thistles have this ability as well. And there's a great book out there called The Drunken Botanist, where she writes about, I can't remember her name right now. She writes about the role that vegetables and plants play in spirits. And there's a big chunk in there about chinar, about artichokes in particular, that's very curious and something that I am very happy to know and use when I make drinks using chinar. Artichokes have the ability to suspend our perception of sweetness temporarily. So this is why sommeliers have like a real bear of a time pairing a dish of artichokes with wine, because your sweetness is impaired, your perception of sweetness is impaired, which means that everything else is, by virtue out of whack as well. But we can play with that. So we do a drink here at Amor y Amargo called CIA, which is a riff on a shot that house shot that Dram in Brooklyn was doing, which was literally just a 50-50 blend of Chinar and Applejack, CIA, Chinar and Applejack. We had Punta Mes and apple bitters and a bit of water, and we serve that drink neat. So it's our neat cocktail. But the apple brandy, the sweet vermouth, and the apple bitters all come off as sort of sweet, and then the chinar sneaks in there and eliminates your ability to perceive that sweetness, and the drink then becomes richer, darker. And someone, Jeffrey says, I love using chinar as a sub for Campari and a Negroni. So do I. Delicious. How have you been using it recently in cocktails? I just described the CIA. I like to pair chinar with sweeter spirits at Amor y Amargo, and when I'm out and about with sweeter ingredients, because again, you can get a lot of sweet ingredient in there, so you can get different mouthfeels, you can get different textures, and then the chinar will suspend your ability to perceive that sweetness. So then the drink comes off as a little bit more bitter. But I love this juice. Anyway, back to it. We said all the things, I think. Also, towards the backside, it's licoricey, but it's not licorice in the same sense as like anise that you get in a lot of Amari. This one's more like herbal licorice, like sort of tarragon or chervil. And then far at the end, it tastes like shredded radicchio and coffee, right? So chinar is also great in coffee cocktails. We do a program here called Double Buzz on the weekends where we do coffee and Amaro pairings and cocktails. So, like plus like is good. So this has sort of coffee notes. It goes great in coffee cocktails, which we use it as well. All right. I have to work after this. I'm going to be drunk. Also, there's a latent mint note that I just got as I took the water, which is great. So it's a bright, fresh herb on the backside of this dark, rich Amaro. Next up, the Della Rista, which we were just talking about. This, also one of my favorites. That's why I put it on the list. Amaro del Herbarista by the Varnelli family. You probably know their products, Sabila and maybe the Varnelli Punch. And they also make, I don't carry it here, but I think they make an anisette as well. There are often hints on Amari labels that give you some idea of what's going on inside. So the hint here is Della Rista means the herbalist. This pencil drawing here is the gentian flower. So this is a gentian Amaro. And then you see there's bees flying around on the label. They have their own apiary. So they've got their own bees flying around, pollinating these bitter flowers. The honey itself that they collect from the bees is bitter. Oh, sorry. This is an unfiltered. Give it a quick shake every single time. Otherwise, your first glass will be not as potent, and your last glass will be, too sedimenty. When we pour this one, I wanted to make sure I poured it right for you to see. It's very sort of cloudy and gray. It looks kind of like wheat beer, which is great. So that's going to give it a greater sense of mouthfeel. It's not as filtered. It's not as smooth. There's particulate matter in there that you can still feel with your tongue. Try to put these where you can see them. So let's take a look at this guy. These guys have been around since the 1800s. They're the Varnelli distilleries over by the Sibillini Mountains. Probably mispronouncing that. I've only been to Italy once. First things you note here are there's a latent smokiness, and that should be noted. These guys do open pot distilling, so when the fire is burning underneath the pot, it sort of smoke wraps around the top, and there gets some, you know, lingering bits of smoke caught up in there. Like it's very straw-like. I think for myself, I feel like I smell honey, but I also know that there's a lot of honey in there, so I think that maybe my brain is just jumping to that conclusion. When we do blind tastings here at Amor y Amargo, or even not blind tastings with guests, I don't talk and the staff doesn't talk until the guest talks. And we don't want to implant our perception into their brains, but you guys aren't sitting right in front of me, so we can't really do that. And I don't know if you have the bottles at all. Maybe you're just taking notes. So definitely straw, like that dryness. Smoke, a little bit of smoke from the open pot, and then let's taste it. Powerfully bitter in comparison to the first three. That honey is there, but again, I've tasted the honey, and the honey is bitter, which is really shocking. You know, when you taste orange blossom honey, it tastes of orange. When you taste clover honey, it tastes of clover, etc. This honey from bees that pollinate bitter flowers, the honey is bitter. Gentian is definitely present. It's very floral, very mouth drying. Gentian is sort of tannic, not in the same way as wine, but it definitely dries your palate. There's less of that lip smacking, you know, lip licking quality here, and then there's woodiness on the backside as well, like oily wood, like sandalwood. I was going to note, I went to the store on my way here. It's right on my way to work. And I should have been saying as we went along, I can back up real fast. We started with Amaro Montenegro, retails for $27, for all for $7.50s. $27. Del Capo's $22. Chinar's $24. This one jumps the shark. $63. It's a liter, but still $63 retail. So it's a pretty expensive bottle. But it's one of my favorites. This guy speaks to me in this time of year, spring, and then of course fall, which is the opposite of, you know, the same but different part of the year, because of that smoky nature. So this stuff plays well with blended scotches, which do not have their own smoke. It also plays well with peated scotches, which have their own smoke, and this just sort of backs it up and takes it even further. Yeah, one of my faves. Ooh. And I didn't mention it's 21%, so it's 42 proof. Again, Amaris generally hover in that range of proof, and they also, with the exception of Della Brisa in this case, they're generally relatively inexpensive. Do you find certain? I'm getting a question here from Stephanie. Do you find certain nationalities more inclined to enjoy Amari and bitters, and/or do you find the age of the patron be more of an indicator? I mean, my world view and world knowledge is a little bit limited. I haven't been out of the country that much, but I've been all over this one. I've been to Italy, Spain, and France, and I was just in Iceland, where they drink a lot of bitter as well. I think it's cultural for sure. I think in America we are very prone to drinking sweet things, and eating sweet foods, whereas in other countries they're not. For instance, when I was in Iceland, everyone was eating candy that was salted licorice, really bitter, really salty, and everyone has a little bag of it, or even they make salted licorice gum. They like more bold, aggressive flavors. Also, as I mentioned before, age plays a factor. The younger you are, the more you're inclined to be drawn towards sweet flavors. As you get older, you learn to appreciate bitter flavors, you learn to understand that they're not poison, they're not going to kill you, or maybe they are poison, they could kill you, but not in small doses. So I think it's a little bit of both. There's a nationality issue as well as an age issue. No, these questions are getting mixed up. All right, we're gonna move to the next one. What was that? That was Chinar. This one is unique. I don't know what markets carry Unicum. I know that it only got back to the United States, or it only got back to New York City just about 3 years ago. It had been gone since 1993. Powerfully interesting story. These guys have Unicum means unique. It's Hungarian. Unicum is how you pronounce it correctly, I think. Really dark. This one, in fact, in 1970 was written about in the New York Times, where they quoted and said they called it the Dark Destroyer. It's the national drink of Hungary. They have a great amount of pride for this stuff. The interesting story that I alluded to is this is the only company of any type, be it spirits or, I don't know, car tires, that was taken away from its owner by a communist regime and was later regained. So the Zwack family had their distillery taken away from them by the communist regime, and when the regime fell, they got it back. So it's pretty crazy. Unicum clocks in 40%, 80 proof. So this is full spirit. That's a dark one. It's been being made since 1790. Might be the oldest one we have here today. Think about that. I feel like from the nose I get some sweetness. Definitely get orange notes, citrus. Yeah, great question, Julian. Is this the same as Zwack? No. This is Zwack. This is Unicum. Made by the same family, the Zwack family. Isabella Zwack is a common guest here at Amor y Amargo. No, it's a great question. When the communists took over and took Unicum away, they gave them basically a false, I mean, I'm paraphrasing the story that she told me. They gave them basically a false recipe. They hid because they're super paranoid, all these guys, they want to hang on to their recipes. They gave them a false recipe, which was sort of the watered down, sweetened version. And that's, unfortunately for us, this is what came to the American market because they thought they could sell it here. But so this is not as, doesn't have the same gusto. Still 40%, so 80 proof. But it's a much thinner, much less viscous, much less aggressive, much less bold version. They also make Unicum Plum, which is charming. This bottle's empty, unfortunately. Charming stuff. They take Unicum and they put it in a barrel for 6 months over dried prunes. So it takes on this crazy florality, perfumey note. It's interesting to know that basically they make Unicum. They water it down and sweeten it to make Zwack. They take Unicum and put it in a barrel with prunes to make plum. Pretty cool. Thanks for asking. And then back to it. This guy has a lot of cinnamon. Right off the nose, it's sort of like that peppery, dry aroma that you get when you smell cinnamon sticks. And then we'll taste. No surprise, comes off as like bitter orange, which we smelled right away. It's also got a very mouth-coating, lip-smacking quality, which I always attribute to eucalyptus and or aloe, which also bring another layer of bitterness. That eucalyptus note also maybe makes it floral. It smells like flowers. It smells like cinnamon and orange flowers. And then on the backside, there's definitely either something pine resiny or juniper that gives it that sort of pine note. And then it finishes out, it starts out very sweet and it finishes out kind of dry and woody. Unicum. In Hungary, they say egészségedve. That's cheers. I know that only because Isabella comes here often. Great question. Jeffrey, again, chiming in, says, what are your thoughts about classifying Amaro as a digestif versus aperitif? I think going back to what we talked in the beginning of this thing, it has to do with human beings' inherent desire to pigeonhole. Frankly, as far as what happens physiologically when we drink a bitter, the difference between aperitif and digestif is 0. So without being too graphic, what's going on if you're on an empty stomach before lunch and you're out on the patio somewhere and you're about to have I don't know, a nice pizza, you might have a glass of Campari, that's your aperitif. But the brain initially says that's poison, and it tells the system to engage itself and start removing that poison. So turning on the digestive system and evacuating what's potentially poison. The same happens with the quote-unquote digestif after meal. So now you've eaten that big meal, and you have a glass of unicum, which is considered more digestif than aperitif, and you're on a full stomach. The brain says the same thing. That's poison, get it out of here, and starts to move everything through your system. So it's really just the brain's attempt at getting you to evacuate your system. So there's no real difference. Digestif, aperitif, these are just words that we apply. Overwhelmingly, we refer to aperitifs as the brighter, more citrusy Amari, you know, Campari, Grand Classico, 1870, brighter things, and digestifs we refer to more as the darker Unicum, Fernet Branca, you know, things like that, Zucca. So again, just I think it's just the maddening desire for human beings to pigeonhole things. Yeah. All right, so that's Unicum, 1790. And then we got one more to taste. It's one of my favorites. People always make fun of me, but we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about some of the ways that we perceive bitterness, because it relates easily to this one. I saved it sort of towards the end. Jägermeister. Let's all argue about Jägermeister. It's delicious. Jägermeister, it's been around for not that long in the grand scheme of things. I think it's something like 75 years old, 80 maybe. That's my Stag's Head Horror. I love that thing. They claim to have 56 ingredients. Once again, all Amari like to jump in and say how many ingredients that they have, but they won't tell you what they are really. You have to guess. And that's also good to note. We just tasted Unicum. That's from Hungary. Now we're tasting Jägermeister. It's from Germany. Amaro itself is Italian, and it means, the word literally means bitter. It tends to also mean bittersweet liqueur from Italy, but it's now become an umbrella term, you know, much in the same way that not all cotton swabs are Q-tips, you know, though we refer to them that way, or not all Kleenex, not all tissue or Kleenex, etc. So this is certainly, in my, you know, opinion, an Amaro. 56 ingredients, great. I don't hate that they tell you that, but they won't tell you what they are. So now we're going to taste Jägermeister, then I'm going to talk to you about how we perceive bitterness and how these guys sort of messed it up. Oh, Brandon Weaver says, is Fernet just a dry Amaro, or is it another category? Fernet is a category. For instance, overwhelmingly, people, even industry professionals, come into my bar where I have somewhere around 11 Fernets on the bar right now, and they'll say, oh, I didn't even know there was another Fernet. And again, going back to what we talked about before, that would be, you know, I would liken that to coming in and thinking that, you know, Elijah Craig is the only bourbon. Elijah Craig is a bourbon. There are many bourbons. Fernet is Fernet Branca is a Fernet. There are many Fernets. And I had a conversation recently with my friend Linnell down in Birmingham, Alabama, about Fernets in particular, and how are they even categorized? And there, for a time, everyone had a consensus that they agreed on, but then we found that many Fernets broke that too. But I still kind of stick to it as at least you know, a structure. Fernet always involves beets. They use beet molasses as the sweetener. They use beet molasses as the original distillate, or a combination thereof, you know, beet molasses distillate and beet molasses as the sweetener. But then we find a few Fernets that don't even do that. And I have Fernets that range from like highly mentholated, like Fernet Branca, really juicy mouthfeels that are full of baking spices like Yellowneck Fernet from the Czech Republic. Then there's the woody, dry, super viscous ones from Mexico, from the Valettes. There's Leatherby Fernet from Chicago, which is really pointy and eucalyptusy and sharp in your mouth. So they're all over the place. Mostly we understand that they use beets in there somewhere, but there are a few that don't do that either. So once again, it's the inherent human desire to categorize things and the impossibility of doing so in this particular arena, which is at the same time, it's a horrible nightmare of a puzzle that'll never be undone. It's also a great thing, meaning we have so much variety. So it's bitter and sweet. What do you think about that? Back to the Jägermeister. Wow, right off the nose. Citrus, grapefruit, orange, big. Anise. Ginger. And then we taste. Saffron. And then a lot of floral stuff. Lavender and rose. Tea like chamomile. And then only recently did I discover this, or I didn't discover it, I found out. There's a lot of blueberries in Jägermeister. So that's what gives it that sort of fresh, juicy bit on the palate. You don't get a lot of wood. A lot of people try and find the wood in here because they know that it's been aged for a year. But even on the Jägermeister, website or whatever, wherever you can get information from those guys, it says aged in mighty oak casks. And I kind of had to like dance around that for a minute and then go seek out what that meant. The kegs themselves are sitting on their sides, so you're facing this circle that's the top of the keg, and they're almost 4 stories tall. So even though the juice is in there for a year, it's not coming into contact with the wood a whole lot. What it's doing in there is just being stored for a year so that those flavors can mellow and sort of come together. Anyway, this juice is delicious. 35%, 70 proof, about $23 for a 750. $23 for a great time, if you ask me. But now I want to talk about, I talked about a little bit of the psychological nature of how we deal with bitterness, and now there's some biological stuff that has to happen. Well, that's a fun question too, Jeffrey, but it's a weird one. What are some of my favorite Amaros that are not yet available in the United States? Hard to say. I don't know what's over there. If it's not here, I haven't seen it. People come in all the time and they say, give me something I've never tried. And I say, well, I'm not inside your head. I don't know what you have and haven't tried. Give me something unique. Well, I look at all these every day. They're not that unique to me. I have finally gotten to a place at Amor y Amargo where I don't have to seek them out as much as I used to. They come to me when they become available in New York City, and that means that I can sell them. These guys come knocking on my door. And I have a little shelf at the far end of the bar with all the labels turned backwards so the guests can't see them, because when we get a new bottle here at Amor, we don't experiment on our guests. We drink it ourselves, and we take meticulous notes that we share with one another. My team and myself is only 4 of us. But I get 2 bottles of anything brand new, and we drink those 2 bottles amongst ourselves before we start testing it on other people. That's why the labels are backwards, so people can't say, oh, what's that? I want to try it. Until we're securing it, we don't serve it. My sort of joking thing that I always say about that is there's no way that I could be expected, my staff or myself, to make chicken soup if we've never eaten chicken. Jeffrey's chiming in again. Similar to Amari Picon. The Bittermans make a product that's kind of similar to Amari Picon. It's called Amari Nouvelle. These tall 375s. There we go. The Bittermans Amari Nouvelle. 30%, so 60 proof. The thing that it's missing that Amari Picon has, so I think frankly the flavor profile is pretty close. It's missing a little bit of extra sweetness and a little bit of extra viscosity in that Amari Picon has burnt sugar and the Amari Nouvelle does not. It's a black bottle, but the liquid is pretty clear. It looks, about like this. So this is the closest one to Amari Picon. There's one from California called Amari Picon, which has an apricot on the label. I've tried it, and I didn't think it was close to Amari Picon, but it's an Amari itself. Don't forget, Amari is just the French word for bitter, like Amaro is in Italian. All right. Anyway, I want to talk about how we manipulate flavors through temperatures and how that affects how we make cocktails here at Amor y Amargo. It should affect your cocktail making as well. It also affects how we taste the bitter flavors. I always use Jägermeister as my sort of example in this world. Until recently, across the bottom of the Jägermeister bottle, it said in big bold letters, which now they put on the back, serve ice cold. That was only in North America, and the only reason they did it was because we have this culture of doing shots of Jägermeister, which that's fine. We do shots of other things too, and we still make cocktails with them. So I had lots of talks with these guys and hopefully encouraged them to change their minds and take that off the label. And then here's the examples that I use, and here's how I teach people this. We only perceive those 5 flavors: sweet, sour, salty, umami, and bitter. Tanya rings in with, why did Ameripetone leave the U.S.? Great question. No idea. No supply where there is no demand. Maybe we aren't demanding it hard enough. They still make it. They changed it, of course, 3 times in their history. It's gone much further down in ABV, and some say the flavor is a lot less robust as well. I'm collecting bottles right now. You can't see them off camera, but on my shelf here I have 6 bottles, 3 each from 2 of the different versions, and I'm now seeking 3 bottles of the original version, so that I can then do an event or something, get people excited. But yeah, it's all about supply and demand. All right, so sweet, sour, salty, umami, and bitter. You come out of the womb craving that sweetness and seeking it out in your food and drink and in your diet to keep you healthy and alive. The rest of them, I told you, we like them all except for bitter. We have to acquire ourselves to that one. But when we chill something the way that the way that frozen machine chills Jägermeister, we lose a lot of its aroma, and aroma constitutes 90% of flavor. So I'd say, well, what if you're in a meadow on a summer afternoon and you go and you pluck a rose and you smell that rose and it smells floral and herbaceous and bright and alive, and then you take it home and you put it in your freezer for 3 hours and then you smell it again? Kind of nothing, right? And that's something that we wouldn't eat. We can eat roses, but we weren't planning to eat that rose. But if we were planning to eat it, we've eliminated 90% of its potential flavor. 90% of flavor comes from our olfactory sense, only 10% off of our soft palate. So then I think about something that we do eat that doesn't really have an aroma. And I think M&Ms, sweetness actually doesn't have its own aroma. We associate aromas with sweetness, but they aren't sweet. For instance, at Christmas time, you go to your grandmother's house and she's baking a pie and you smell, oh my gosh, that cinnamon, it smells so sweet. Have you ever bit down on a cinnamon stick? It's not sweet at all. We just associate cinnamon with sweet. A bowl of sugar sitting right in front of you will smell like nothing. So M&Ms have no aroma. But when you eat them, they're crunchy on the outside, smooth in the middle, sweet, chocolatey, whatever. But then if you throw those in the freezer for 3 hours and go back and eat some, well, they're certainly crunchy, they're frozen. But now, if they had an aroma, we've eliminated its volatile oils by freezing it, compressing them. And then as we put it across our soft palate, our tongues, our taste buds, it's so cold that it's literally freezing in your tongue. So suddenly you have no real perception of what that flavor is unless you masticulate and chew until they come back to body temperature, and then you can get the full flavor of those M&Ms. So then we apply that sort of thing to what we just talked about. Jägermeister or any of these Amari or any spirit in general, if we put it in the freezer and we let it get so cold that it has no aroma or very little aroma, we compress its volatility, then we're eliminating our potential chance for 90% of its flavor. And then again, as it goes across our soft palate, especially a shot of liquid, which we're just going to throw back, we're not going to hang out in our mouth until it gets warm again. It goes right across our taste buds and it freezes them because it's colder than ice. It's still liquid, but it's colder than ice. Max Green says vanilla extract. Thanks, Max, for that. So it's colder than ice as it goes across your tongue. It's numbing your soft palate. So 90% of its flavor is erased by not having aroma. The remaining 10% is definitely interfered with by being so cold that you don't get much out of it. But here's the trick. We are biologically programmed to perceive bitter at all times because it is a threat to us as an individual and a threat to us at large as a species. So when you see that frat boy with his hat on backwards taking down that shot of ice cold from a Jägermeister, and he makes that terrible face, is because all he got was a big mouthful of bitter, right? He or the system eliminated his ability to taste these 56 ingredients that they claim to have. It gets whittled down to just bitter. Anyway, that's a great thing to know as a culinary person, as a drink maker, as an imbiber of drinks or food. Like, temperature affects flavor because it affects aroma, and aroma is 90% of flavor. Does that make sense? All right, I have a bit of time left. Not enough questions. I want to mention again before I forget, at the end of this program, at Tales of the Cocktails Facebook page, they're giving away a copy of Mark Bitterman's book, The Bitterman's Field Guide to Bitters and Amari. I'm not sure if you gotta do anything to win that or just go over there real quick. They have one copy to give away. And I don't know. What else we got, people? Anything behind me you want to try? Stefan Waz, citrus peel is traditionally used as garnish. Any other garnish that would enhance an Amaro? Well, because of what you just said, or maybe not because of it, but true to form to what you just said, the only garnish we use at Amor y Amargo is citrus, grapefruit, orange, and lemon, not even lime. Most Amari have a big burst of citrus in them, so it's an easy go to back that up. But as we mentioned, going through all the flavor notes on all of these different things, don't forget you can enhance them with any of those. Like plus like is a common way of pairing things. So when we said that we tasted cinnamon back in the Del Capo, we could certainly, you know, do a cinnamon garnish, or even nutmeg, baking spices when we talked about the baking spices that were in there. Jägermeister, I think, goes great with grapefruit juice. I make basically a margarita using Jägermeister instead of tequila in the summertime. It's like a dark, rich, bold margarita style cocktail. Ginger is present in Jägermeister as well, so anything with ginger goes great there. I don't know. Does that help? This is so unusual to have people typing in. Throw me a softball, Max. Well, I guess we're kind of wrapping up then. Come on. All right, I'm back. Sorry, I got dropped for a second, right at the end. Loading questions. We're drinking Jägermeister and Amaro Montenegro. All right, I'm back, and sound is live. Okay. Let's see, no questions. Does chilling and diluting with aroma more than we realize? Tanya. Yeah, Tanya. I don't think more cocktails should be served neat. And don't forget, I'm expressing the view from the angle of the extreme, right? Frozen. and dilution is great for cocktails. It opens up water-soluble esters, which release more aromatic compounds, which mean that there's more aroma. So dilution is great. As mentioned earlier in the broadcast, I don't know if you were here. There's always a neat cocktail on the menu at Amor y Amargo. Currently, it's called the CIA, and in that neat cocktail, we build it with Cynar, apple brandy, Punta Mess, apple bitters, and water. Though it's not diluted by chilling, it still gets some dilution because that opens up those aromas. Also softens the mouthfeel, makes it less rich. Sorry, my tech person, Candace. All right, justify Novasalis to us, says Stefan Waz. I can talk to you about it. I don't know if I can justify it. It's I'll grab it real fast. Alistair Novasalis, Stefan Waz is asking me to justify this stuff. This was brought to us by the kids over at House Alpens. There are some rules in Amaro. They're pretty loose. Remember we talked bittersweet liqueur? All Amaro involve a sweetening agent of some kind. This one here uses a sap from one of the trees that they get the bark to make the Amaro. So technically not a sweetener, but it adds some inherent sweetness. It is sharply bitter, powerfully drying to the palate. This is by far the bitterest of all the potable bitters I carry at Amor y Amargo, maybe that I've ever seen or had in my life. Alistair Novasalis. It's a wine-based Amaro. It only clocks in at 16%, so 32 proof. It's very dark. There's a lot of pine and juniper notes, so it's an Alpino, and then it is just wickedly bitter. Thanks for asking, Stefan. Oh, it's the same. So when I got knocked off the air, it's making all the questions come back up again. Liberty Bar loves me. Thanks, Brandon. Yeah. Anyway, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Get in those last minute questions. I see people are dropping off probably because I went dark for a second. This has been a great ton of fun. Again, I want to thank Tales of the Cocktail and Ann Tennerman for reaching out to me to do this. It's humbling to know that people are interested to hear what I have to say. And then Candace down in the office there has been integral in helping me. She's texting me right now to say that we're back on or whatever. So it's a lot of fun. I'm only the second one of these. If it goes well, they'll continue to do them. If you let them know what it is you want to see or hear, I'm certain they'll take your input to heart so that they can bring you content and programming that you want. If you want to hear more from me or from my bar, the sign on the back of the bar there lets you know where I'm at. Amor y Amargo, CreativeDrunk on both Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Another question? No. Are there any spirits you would say typify salty? Charlie Marshall. Yeah, Charlie, I just got back from Iceland. This one here is called Opal. My tasting notes on my very first try of Opal, I wrote down salted mouthwash, highly mentholated, really bright and refreshing in that way, but very salty. As mentioned earlier in the broadcast, when I was over in Iceland, they eat a candy that's salted licorice, so it kind of goes in line. In fact, Opal makes that candy, and in fact, weirdly, they made the candy prior to making the spirit. So salted licorice and menthol, definitely salty. When people come into Amor y Amargo and ask for a dirty martini, which is not anything we can do because I don't have olives or olive brine, I say, well, I can make you something that's kind of down that road, and I make up a martini using that. Thanks for asking, Charlie. See, when I touched this button before, I went dark, so I'm trying to be nervous. I hope I answered everyone's questions. All right. Yeah, I think I touched on all the ones that you gave me. Anyway, this little chat will be archived at Tales of the Cocktail 365, and then you guys can watch it again or share it with your friends. I hope it was entertaining and informative. Please come and see me at the bar at Amor y Amargo. We're in the East Village of New York, and whenever you're here, you're certainly welcome. We love to host industry, we love to host enthusiasts, and we love to teach people. No better place to get an education than at a bar, and no better bar to get that education than here. I think I'm being told to sign off, and I thank you all. All right. I'm holding just to see what she's writing. Yeah. Great. Oh, she says, if you have any other questions, please ask on the event page, and I'll get to those a little bit later. I've got to open the bar now. But so again, thanks for watching. Go over to Tales of the Cocktails Facebook page and see if you can win that book by Mark Bitterman. And I look forward to seeing you all here at the bar at Amor y Amargo or down in New Orleans at Tales of the Cocktail. Cheers.